Hi, my name's Byrd, and this is my hero or villain project. First off, I want to start off by saying that a hero is a person who's admired or idealized for courage, outstanding achievements, or noble qualities. Heroes are always leaders. However, not all leaders are heroes. Throughout our history, many leaders have contributed to establishing the world we know today. The two leaders that I chose to examine are Alexander the Great and Saddam Hussein. They both did good things for their people and were both great leaders. However, both were not necessarily leaders. So let's start off with Alexander the Great. First off, Alexander was king of the Macedonian Empire from 336 to 323 BC. He was born in the Pella region of ancient Greece to King Philip II and Queen Olympia. The Pella region of the Greek Empire was barbaric at the time, so Alexander was tutored by Aristotle, who they brought in to teach him more civilized manners. Alexander took over the kingdom after his father's death at age 19. He's known as one of history's most powerful rulers and best military minds. He was careful in his strategy during war, and his movements were marked by speed and logistical intelligence. Alexander was admired little during his lifetime. However, throughout history, other rulers have emulated his strategy to achieve power. He died at age 32 from malaria, allegedly, but we'll never know the cause of his death because he had so many enemies that someone could have poisoned him or something could have happened to that extent. So he died at an early age, but at the same time, the young man was very accomplished throughout his whole lifetime and is one of the great world leaders we see today. He was a great leader throughout his lifetime, such a good leader that other world leaders started following his lead and employing his methods of leadership. The most important thing I believe that made Alexander such a great leader was his vision. Mendenhall defines visioning as a leader's ability to develop and articulate a vision and accompanying strategy that encompasses one's needs. Alexander the Great used visioning and would speak to his people what his thoughts were, which in turn helped them gain their affection. Another major leadership trait that Alexander the Great possessed was execution. He used this execution particularly well by maintaining an excellent information system. He was able to interpret his opponent's motives and was a master at coordinating all parts of his military machine. No other military leader before him ever used speed and surprise with such dexterity. He knew the true value of the statement, "One is either quick or one is dead." Alexander also led by example, which is always key in gaining and maintaining the trust of your people. An example of this is in wartime, he would lead from the front of the battle instead of being behind the scenes. By being in front, this helped his people know that he was fighting with them instead of just commanding. And this, in turn, helped his people believe in the cause they were fighting for by him leading in the front of the battle. As previously stated, Alexander the Great was truly an exceptional leader. However, I don't believe he was a hero. After all, he was known as a conqueror and was known for his military leadership. As a conqueror, obviously, many died as a result of him trying to spread his empire, which adds to the argument of him being a villain. Even though there's more of an argument towards him being named a villain, not everything he did was bad. During his conquering, he spread Greek culture throughout his empire, which helped some live a better life because they weren't living like savages anymore. And at the same time, he learned the cultures and customs of the people he was conquering, which tells us that he wasn't making everyone conform to his culture and was just letting them live their lives. Another thing that didn't make him evil was that his intention was not to plunder and burn all the lands he conquered. He just wanted to spread his empire. I believe that he stands somewhere in between being a hero and being a villain, because he did do many bad things in conquering, but at the same time he did positive things. The next leader that I chose to examine is Saddam Hussein, and he's probably the best known Middle Eastern dictator. He was born to a poor family near Crete and practiced Arab nationalism against Britain from a young age. Saddam eventually grew up and became vice president of the Revolutionary Council. And with this position of power, he abused it, and he killed, tortured, or jailed government officials that had differing views of his. Eventually he became president. And when he became president, he declared a war on Tehran that lasted 8 years, and the death count was over 1 million. And the war just ended in a tie, so it was basically pointless. So then, after this war, Saddam expanded to the other side of his positioning in the Middle East. Since he couldn't expand east, he claimed Kuwait as the 19th province of Iraq. And the U.S. didn't like this very much, so we promoted the Kurds and Shiites to rebel against Saddam. And in turn, this didn't work out very well, so Saddam massacred this rebellion and continued to tyrannize these groups after the rebellion, and tortured, killed them, did everything in his power to put them down throughout the rest of their time. So after this, when the terror attacks on 9/11 happened on U.S. soil, Saddam openly praised them, so then he naturally became a U.S. target, especially after him claiming Kuwait. So he became a U.S. target on the war of terrorism, and on November 5th, Saddam was found guilty of crimes against humanity by his own country, and a month later he was hung because of these crimes against humanity. So let's talk a little bit about Saddam's leadership. I mean, obviously, most people in the world consider him a madman, but he definitely demands the credit of being a tremendous leader. The main thing that Saddam really possessed was his ambition and tenacity. He was born of humble beginnings, having to steal so his family could eat, so that was ambitious of him. And he wouldn't stop until he was on top. He did just this, even though many people were hurt in the process, which is why he was a negative leader. But still, he was a good leader with regards to the talents that he possessed. He went from being born a peasant to president of Iraq, like just in the snap of his fingers, just because of his drive and will. He had tremendous vision, just like Alexander the Great did that we talked about. And he did everything in his power to make this vision a reality. So when he was little, he visioned himself being president. He sure did that. Saddam's pursuit of power for himself in Iraq was boundless. In his mind, the destinies of Saddam and Iraq were one and indistinguishable. His exalted self-concept is fused with the Ba'athist ideology that Ba'athist dreams will be realized when the Arab nation is unified under one strong leader. And he truly believed that he was this strong leader to unify this and make all the dreams come true. He stopped at nothing to gain his power. And although crazy in our eyes, this drive for promotion and power definitely constitutes recognition of leadership. All of Saddam's actions are considered justified if they are serving Hussein's needs and messianic ambitions. And this quote from one of the readings just means that he did nothing he did nothing to stop until he got what he wanted, because it was justified because he was furthering himself. Although Saddam was a great leader, he was definitely classified as a villain. This was evident to everyone when he got the death penalty in the same country he ruled, especially when these this death penalty was for the charge of crimes against humanity. Saddam was a good leader with regards to his ambitions and to those that thought radically like he did and followed him, but his rise to power had many millions of people die because of him. And he was known as the madman of the Middle East, so naturally he's just a villain. Alexander the Great and Saddam Hussein were both good leaders, respectively, even though none of them were considered heroes. Both left many dead in their rise to ultimate power. However, Alexander the Great was definitely less of the villain because he didn't just kill everyone that opposed him. He wanted them to live their own culture and stuff like that. What's interesting to me is the turmoil in the Middle East that Saddam was involved with. It was originally caused by Alexander the Great's empire expansion. This is where the Middle East of the world became just a struggle for power. So he originally won that territory on his eastward journey of conquest, and then eventually Saddam Hussein captured this same land. So that's funny to me. But as a public, let's emulate these two leaders' positive leadership qualities, but let's definitely try to stay away from being villains like they are.